Hey everyone! I'm actually going to start calling you guys my team because we're a team in this together to kind of transform the accounting world is my goal. So, a couple things we're going to chat about today. One is the power of yes. Okay, so I did say that we're going to talk about the power of yes and no. We're going to talk about the power of yes today, and then in another live, I'm going to talk about the power of no because they are two very strong topics, and I don't want one to overshadow the other. So let's talk about the power of yes first. So I want to share the example of one of my very best friends, and it has nothing to do with career or accounting or anything like that. She went through a divorce, and we, as going through a divorce, you have a lot of emotions and feelings, and of course you're just going through so much. And this one summer, she decided that everything that she was going to do, like anytime anyone was going to ask her out, or anytime anyone was going to ask her to do something, she was going to say yes. And so she did. And one of the things that I had said, you need to join maybe Tinder. And she couldn't say no because everything that summer was about yes. So she said yes. And guess what? She joined Tinder and she met her husband. They've been together for 5 years. They just got married. And so the power of yes. And I just think back to that, and I just love this story because it's like, had she not said yes to Tinder and yes to that date to the person who now she says in the very beginning, wasn't the person that she ever would have thought that she would end up with. It's very powerful, right? Like, she said yes to all of these things that she typically would say no to, and now she's in this fabulous relationship, and she has these amazing children that come from, him that she gets to co-parent. And it's just an awesome thing to see that someone had such an amazing experience by just saying yes. So yes is very powerful, and it can also be, if you say yes to the wrong things, and it can take you down the wrong road. So being very aware of what you're saying yes to, and being empowered by that yes, and going, okay, so, if someone's asking something of me, or maybe it is about taking one of our courses, and you really, if you're going to commit and you're going to say yes, think about what that yes is going to do for you. Is it going to change your life? Probably. Now let's think, write down every single thing that yes is going to do for you before you even say yes. And then, hi, I see Darlene and Haley. Hey guys. So I encourage you guys to say yes to things that might feel like you wouldn't ever say yes to, because it's going to potentially put you in a better position down the line, a couple years down the line, just like my friend. So I love that story. I'll get more into detail with the power of no, maybe next week. But I want to talk about a really a deep topic today. And the reason why, so our community has experienced, and I'm sure every community experiences this all the time, but I want to bring it up because it has to do with our accounting world and how we can be proactive leaders to ensure that these things don't happen. So this is a really big word, embezzlement. Hi, Cassia. Embezzlement, okay? So I just read a news story that in our local community, one of our bookkeeping companies that we are all familiar with in our local community, she's been charged with embezzlement to the tune of almost $200,000 within a couple of months. And it's insane to me. It is and it isn't, because it's not the first time that I've heard of this, but it is something that, you know, as we move along and we gain our clients, they trust us. It's typically word of mouth that we're getting them. And I can't imagine being the client on the other end and going through this and having, you know, both sides. Like, I don't really understand how it gets to that point where that needs to happen, but it is a risk. So I want to talk about it because this piece of our business is a risk. So I'm gonna tell you kind of like my experience and a couple of examples of how embezzlement, how I've learned about it and have been proactive in ensuring that it is not going to happen to any of our clients. So one story I have is a client we onboarded a couple years ago, and they had let go of their bookkeeper because they were suspicious that there was some embezzlement. And when they contacted a forensic accountant, it was going to cost them like $20,000 to go through that audit to figure it out. And so they brought us on to help them through the transition to get in, you know, a new bookkeeper, and to put some procedures in place and to look into it and see, like, is this worth paying $20,000 for an audit to potentially go after her. And what we uncovered was that there was embezzlement, and that she was doing it in tricky ways, not just taking money or not just adding it to her paycheck, but spending money on the company credit card and for herself. You know, there was a lot of things like that, and like vendors where she would, you know, buy things through a vendor for herself. The company would pay for it. And because they didn't have the right structure or policies or procedures in place to catch that happened to them, and they lost, we estimated about $20,000. So they decided, you know what, it's not worth it to go forward and do this forensic analysis and take her to court, because we already just lost $20,000, and now let's pay another $20,000 to get her, maybe even more, probably more, to get her to pay it back. And so they let it be, and they lost $20,000. And that really is small compared to some of these other companies, like this one that is just experiencing it right now in our local community. $200,000 this business owner has lost, and hopefully we'll be able to get it. I don't know the process of how they go through all of that to get it back, but so that's just one example. And so I want to talk to you guys about what, like, I used to do in my past when I was working for the nonprofit alongside with Karen Burke, my executive director, who's still there. We would run through scenarios quite often of how someone could embezzle it through our nonprofit, including me. So I would sit there and go, how could I, because I am in charge of all of this, how could I, if I wanted to, embezzle? And we figure out like the process of that, and then we implemented procedures and processes in place to protect that, because I know I'm not going to embezzle. However, I really appreciate the fact that we put policies and procedures in place to protect me from ever having to be blamed incorrectly, right? And so I was so on board with this whole entire process of okay, how in what ways is there a break in our process that someone or myself or you or even her could embezzle? And we really put in all of these procedures to protect us. And then going through audits every year and then refining that, right? Because there's always holes. And so we're just constantly trying to like fill all those holes and make sure that like we are as protected as possible to ensure that that doesn't happen. So as I'm talking about this and this coming up locally, I really want to talk to you guys as accountants, as bookkeepers, working for clients, working for your bosses, is how are you at risk in your position for being blamed for something that potentially you might not have done? And two, how are you or the companies at risk of being embezzled, having like a bookkeeper or someone on staff being able to take from the company? These small businesses were built by people who have these passions for whatever they're doing, and accounting, unless they're going into the accounting field, it's not accounting. And so we as the accountants and as the bookkeepers and as the leaders of the finance department need to ensure that we are placing these procedures and policies and thinking how this could happen, how could this happen, so that we can protect this company's asset, which is cash, okay? The biggest asset of all. So I really encourage you, and actually in our course we have a piece on this, on how you guys can ensure that you are going through the process of ensuring that there is a very low risk of this happening to you or your clients. Guess what? I also heard a story about a year ago about an accountant who hired a bookkeeper for his company. He trusted her 100%, let go of the accounting, let her pay the bills, let her do all of the things that we do without his supervision, and he got embezzled by her. So really our job, and as we become outsourced CFOs or high-level accountants that are in there, we are there to protect the owner's assets. This whole like embezzlement, it's not like, it's disgusting, right? It's like, wow, like that. And there are things that could have been done and implemented to be able to protect that. And I'm really sad for this company because it's going to be really hard for them to trust other accountants. But by implementing certain things in place, and that's what we go through in our course, you implement these things, you're able to really protect the company from having a minimal risk that will happen to them. And then number one thing is just they need to keep an eye on their stuff. And thankfully, I think from what I read with this most recent one is that it was a couple months. It was only a couple months. But however, then we can think, why did it take a couple months? Because if someone was looking at the books more often, like weekly, it might have been figured out sooner. And that's just so much money for a small business owner to lose out. That can cause someone to go out of business, and their passion is crushed just due to the fact that these procedures haven't been implemented. So I encourage all of you that are in the accounting field to take a look at your policies and procedures and how you're protecting either your clients or if you are working for someone, the owner of the company that you're working for, how are you protecting their asset from being embezzled? and go through every step of everything that you can think of that would be a way for someone to take. Like someone is dropping off cash. What's the process? What's the process for that? Because who's getting it? Who's getting that cash, and where is it going, and how does anyone even know that was dropped off? So going through all of those processes and reevaluating them, and then implementing something that is much more protective of the owner losing that money is going to just prove to your customers that you care about them and their asset, number one asset. And when we're protecting that, so word of mouth, of course, for all of us accountants is the biggest way. And how awful would that be to have the word of mouth where you're referring to someone who ends up embezzling. So a really tough topic. I'm sure you guys have your own stories in your own local communities, and this is happening all the time and on a small scale up to a large scale. And we really want to implement as we help these customers and clients to protect that. So let's not, I don't want to hear about these stories. I want, how do we get to a point where we're helping these companies so that they do not end up like one of the others that have already dealt with it. So if you have any questions, drop a line. I am really enjoying chatting with you guys. It's been so much fun. If you have any topics that you guys want me to discuss, also just post it below. I hope to do this a little bit more often. Fridays, I love touching base with you on Fridays, but I think I might do it maybe twice a week. I hope you have your coffee. I hope you have an amazing Friday. I am going to go off and help a client do some awesome certified payroll. So everybody have an amazing day. I hope that you all gained at least a little bit of knowledge through this and some inspiration to say yes to things that you might not say yes to. So we'll see you all next time.